cameras didn't just flash. They erupted like a lightning storm, blinding everyone standing on the red carpet of the Met Gala. Grant stood frozen, his hand slipping from his mistress's waist as the air left his lungs. A hush fell over the crowd, silencing even the most aggressive paparazzi. It wasn't a celebrity or a politician commanding this sudden reverence. It was her, the woman Grant had discarded 6 months ago for being too plain and unambitious. Natalie wasn't just walking the carpet. She was owning it, draped in a gown that whispered revenge. And she wasn't alone. The marriage ended not with a scream, but with the quiet click of a Mont Blanc pen against a mahogany desk. Grant didn't even look up from the divorce papers as he slid them across the marble island of their penthouse kitchen. He was dressed in his signature charcoal Tom Ford suit, checking his reflection in the dark window, ensuring his tie was perfectly dimpled. "It's generous, Natalie," Grant said, his voice smooth, detached, the same tone he used when firing underperforming mid-level managers at his private equity firm, Apex Capital. The townhouse in Connecticut, the 2021 Range Rover, and spousal support for 3 years. It's more than fair. Natalie stood on the other side of the island. She was wearing a faded, oversized t-shirt and leggings, her hair pulled back in a messy bun that hadn't been touched up since she dropped their dry cleaning off that morning. She looked tired. She always looked tired these days. "Is that what I am?" Natalie asked softly, her eyes scanning the legal jargon without really reading it. "A liability you're writing off before the fiscal year ends?" Grant finally looked at her. His gaze was critical, sweeping over her lack of makeup and the faint dark circles under her eyes. "Don't make this dramatic. You know we've evolved in different directions. My world, it requires a certain presence, a certain energy. And Chloe has that energy?" Grant didn't flinch at the name. "Chloe understands the industry. She's a vital asset to my public image. She fits the gala circuit. She fits the boardrooms. You, Natalie, you've always preferred the background. I'm just letting you stay there." He checked his Rolex, a Submariner he'd bought to celebrate his first million, a milestone Natalie had saved coupons to help him reach back when they were eating instant noodles in a studio apartment in Queens. "I need you to sign, Nat. I have a dinner at Le Bernardin at 8. Natalie picked up the pen. Her hand didn't shake. For 10 years, she had been the invisible foundation of Grant's life. She had proofread his business plans, managed his schedule, charmed his difficult investors with home-cooked meals, and quietly smoothed over his arrogance so people would actually want to work with him. She had made herself small so he could feel big. And now he had outgrown the foundation. She signed. "There is one change," Natalie said, her voice unexpectedly steady. Grant sighed, impatient. "What?" "You want the beach house? Fine. Take it." "No," Natalie said. "I don't want the beach house. I don't want the alimony." Grant raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "Trying to play the martyr? It won't work, Nat. Take the money." "I want the old mill property," she said. Grant laughed. It was a genuine barking laugh. "The textile factory? The one in upstate New York? It's a rusted heap. It's been bleeding money for 5 years. My advisors have been telling me to sell it for scrap metal. It's a literal garbage dump of assets." "I want it," Natalie repeated. "Transfer full ownership of the old mill and its subsidiary, Heritage Weaves, to my name. In exchange, I waive all spousal support and claim no ownership of Apex Capital." Grant looked at her as if she had lost her mind. The old mill was a tax write-off, a sentimental purchase he'd made years ago, thinking he'd turn it into lofts before realizing the zoning laws were a nightmare. It was worthless. "You're trading millions in alimony for a pile of rust?" Grant asked, pulling out his phone to text his lawyer, Arthur. "That's the deal, Grant. Take it or I hire a forensic accountant to look into Apex's offshore accounts in the Caymans." Grant froze, his eyes narrowed. He didn't know how she knew about the Cayman accounts. He had never told her. "Fine," he snapped, grabbing the papers and scribbling the amendment in the margins. "You want the trash? It's yours. Consider it your parting gift." He didn't say goodbye. He grabbed his briefcase, checked his reflection one last time, and walked out the door. He was already thinking about the dinner at Le Bernardin. He was thinking about Chloe, waiting for him in a red silk dress, ready to toast to their future. He didn't look back to see Natalie standing in the empty kitchen. He didn't see her walk to the window and watch him get into his waiting town car. And he certainly didn't see the moment the plain expression dropped from her face, replaced by a cold, sharp intelligence that would have terrified him if he had bothered to pay attention. Natalie pulled out her phone. She dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "It's done," she said into the receiver. "I have the factory. Initiate Phase 2. 6 months later." New York City was buzzing. It was the first Monday in May, which meant only one thing: the Vanguard Gala. Grant sat in his corner office on the 45th floor of the Hudson Yards Tower, overlooking the city. Life had been perfect. Since the divorce, Apex Capital's stock had risen 15%. He was the golden boy of the financial world, featured on the cover of Forbes under the headline, "The Bachelor Billionaire." Chloe sat on the leather sofa across from him, scrolling through Instagram. She was stunning, undeniably. Blonde, leggy, and possessing a laugh that sounded like wind chimes, a laugh she practiced in the mirror. "Grant, baby," she cooed, holding up her phone. "Everyone is talking about the guest list for tonight. They say there's a mystery guest, someone who just bought the majority stake in the LVMH supply chain. Probably some Saudi prince or a tech kid from Silicon Valley," Grant dismissed, adjusting his diamond cufflinks. "Doesn't matter. Tonight is about us. We're seated at the head table with the senator and the CEO of Chase." Chloe stood up and twirled. She was wearing a custom-made emerald gown that had cost more than Grant's first car. It was low-cut, high-slit, and screamed, "New money." "Do I look like the future Mrs. CEO?" she asked, batting her eyelashes. "You look like a trophy," Grant said, meaning it as a compliment. He walked over and kissed her cheek. "This is our debut, Chloe. The first time we walk the carpet as an official couple. No more sneaking around. We are the power couple of New York." He checked his email one last time. There was a notification from his lawyer, Arthur. Subject: the mill property. Body: Grant. Just a heads up. Tried to send a surveyor to that old factory in upstate to see if we could buy back a piece of the land for that server farm project. Security wouldn't let them in. High-grade perimeter fences. Military grade. What is your ex doing up there? Grant frowned and deleted the email. "Who cares?" he muttered. "She's probably hoarding cats and knitting scarves." He hadn't spoken to Natalie in 6 months. He assumed she had moved back to her parents' small house in Ohio, defeated and broken. He liked that image. It made him feel powerful. "Ready to go?" Grant asked, offering his arm to Chloe. "Born ready," she beamed. The limousine ride to the Metropolitan Museum of Art was a blur of champagne and Chloe taking selfies. When they arrived, the chaos was palpable. The red carpet was a sea of velvet ropes, screaming fans, and blinding flashes. Grant stepped out first, buttoning his jacket. The cameras clicked, a familiar rhythmic sound. He turned and helped Chloe out. The paparazzi went wild, shouting his name. "Grant! Grant! Over here!" "Who are you wearing?" "Is this the engagement?" He waved, flashing his practiced smile. He felt invincible. He guided Chloe up the famous steps, pausing at the designated spots for photos. He whispered in her ear, "See, we own this city." They reached the top of the stairs, where the reporters from Vogue and Vanity Fair were conducting interviews. Grant prepared his sound bites. But then the atmosphere shifted. It started as a ripple near the street. The screaming fans suddenly went quiet, then erupted into a different kind of noise, a roar of shock and awe. The photographers at the bottom of the stairs turned their backs on Grant and Chloe, their lenses swinging toward the arrival point. "What's happening?" Chloe snapped. annoyed that the attention had drifted. Grant craned his neck. A sleek, matte black Phantom Rolls-Royce had pulled up. It didn't have a license plate, just a silver crest on the bumper. The driver, a man who looked more like a Secret Service agent than a chauffeur, stepped out and opened the back door. First, a pair of heels hit the red carpet. They weren't the standard Louboutins everyone else was wearing. They were structured, architectural, glittering with black diamonds. Then the woman emerged. Grant blinked. He squinted. She was wearing a dress that defied physics. It was a liquid silver material that seemed to ripple like mercury over her skin, high-necked but backless, with a train that flowed like oil. Her hair, usually a messy brown bun, was now a sleek platinum bob that caught the light like a blade. Her makeup was sharp, accentuating high cheekbones he didn't remember her having. She looked dangerous. She looked expensive. She looked like a queen walking among peasants. "Who is that?" Chloe whispered, her voice trembling with jealousy. The crowd parted. The woman began to ascend the stairs. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She walked with a predator's grace, her eyes locked on the entrance. As she got closer, the realization hit Grant like a physical blow to the stomach. Shape of the eyes, the curve of the jaw. "No," he whispered, the color draining from his face. "It can't be." The reporters thrust their microphones toward her. Ma'am, who are you wearing?" The woman paused, just 3 steps below Grant and Chloe. She looked up, her eyes, cold and blue, locked onto Grant's. There was no warmth, no recognition of their 10 years together. Just the look a human gives an ant before stepping on it. "I'm wearing heritage," she said, her voice husky and confident, projected perfectly for the cameras. "Natalie?" Grant choked out, his voice cracking. She didn't answer him. She didn't even acknowledge he had spoken. She simply shifted her gaze to Chloe, looked her up and down for a fraction of a second, and gave a tiny, pitying smirk. Then a man stepped up beside her. It was Harrison Thorne, the elusive billionaire owner of the Orion Tech Group, Grant's biggest competitor, and a man Grant had been trying to get a meeting with for 3 years. Harrison placed a hand on Natalie's lower back. "Shall we, darling?" "We shall," Natalie said. And together they walked past Grant and Chloe, leaving the power couple standing in the dust, their mouths hanging open as the world's cameras turned away from them to follow the new Queen of New York. The interior of the Metropolitan Museum of Art had been transformed into a dreamscape of gold leaf and white roses, a setting designed to make the wealthy feel like gods. But for Grant, the air inside the Temple of Dendur felt thin, suffocatingly tight against his chest. He walked mechanically, Chloe clutching his biceps so hard her perfectly manicured nails were digging into his tuxedo jacket. The flashbulbs were gone, but something worse had replaced them, the eyes of his peers. In the high-stakes world of New York private equity, information traveled faster than light. By the time Grant and Chloe reached the cocktail reception, the Whisper Network had already done its work. He could see it in the way people looked at him, glances that darted away the moment he made eye contact. He saw Arthur, his lawyer, frantically typing on his phone in the corner, looking pale. "Grant, there you are," Chloe chirped, seemingly oblivious to the tension. She smoothed her emerald dress, desperate to be seen. "We need to find our table. I want to be seated before the opening remarks. I heard we're next to the senator." Grant nodded stiffly, scanning the room. He wasn't looking for their table. He was looking for her. He found her near the Egyptian sandstone temple, standing in the center of a circle that included the CEO of Goldman Sachs, a famous French actress, and, inexplicably, the governor of New York. Natalie was laughing, not the polite, stifled chuckle she used to give at his business dinners, but a full, throaty sound that drew people in. Harrison Thorne stood at her side, playing the role of dutiful consort, holding her glass of vintage Bollinger while she animatedly told a story. She's holding court," Grant whispered, the reality of it unable to sink in. "She doesn't even know these people." She's probably embarrassing herself, Chloe sneered, though her voice wavered. Look at that dress. It's too much. It's trying too hard. Everyone is probably laughing at her. But they weren't laughing. They were captivated. Grant watched as the CEO of LVMH, a man Grant had been trying to get a golf game with for 2 years, leaned in and touched the fabric of Natalie's sleeve with a look of reverence. Natalie nodded, said something, and handed him a business card, a sleek, black metal card that caught the light. "Come on," Grant snapped, grabbing Chloe's elbow. "Let's get to our seats. The head table is this way." He marched them toward the front of the room, toward table 1, the seat of power. He needed to sit down. He needed the validation of his placement to remind everyone, and himself, that he was still the king of this jungle. He reached table 1. He saw the place cards. Harrison Thorne. Natalie V. He froze. "Excuse me," Grant said, grabbing a passing event coordinator by the arm. "There's been a mistake. I'm Grant Miller, Apex Capital. This is my table." The coordinator, a young woman with a headset and a clipboard, looked at him with a mix of pity and professional detachment. She tapped her iPad. "Mr. Miller." "Ah, yes. There was a last-minute adjustment to the seating chart this afternoon." "Adjustment?" Grant's voice rose an octave. "I paid $50,000 for this plate." "Yes, sir, and we appreciate your donation. You've been moved to table 47. "Table 47? Chloe squeaked. "Where is that?" The coordinator pointed toward the back of the room, near the kitchen doors and the restrooms. "It's in the overflow section, beneath the gallery overhang." Grant felt the blood drain from his face. Table 47 was the Siberia of the Met Gala. It was where they put the D-list influencers and the obscure charity relatives. "This is unacceptable," Grant hissed. "Who authorized this?" The coordinator hesitated, then lowered her voice. "The request came from the platinum sponsor of the evening, sir. They exercise their prerogative to curate the front row." "Who is the platinum sponsor?" Grant demanded. "Bank of America? Google?" The coordinator pointed to the massive banner hanging above the Temple of Dendur, which Grant had been too distracted to notice when he walked in. It wasn't a bank. It wasn't a tech giant. The banner was made of a shimmering, silvery fabric, embroidered with a single, elegant logo. "Heritage weaves the future of fabric." Grant stared at the banner. The letters seemed to mock him. Heritage weaves, the pile of rust subsidiary of the old mill, the garbage asset he had thrown at Natalie to get her to sign the divorce papers faster. "Grant," Chloe whined, tugging on his arm. "People are staring. Let's just go to the other table." "No," Grant said, shaking her off. The shock was hardening into anger, a cold, arrogant fury. He wasn't going to be banished to the kitchen by his ex-wife. He was Grant Miller. He broke companies for a living. "You go to the table," Grant told Chloe. "What? Where are you going?" "I'm going to go say hello to my ex-wife." Grant buttoned his jacket, fixed his cuffs, and marched straight into the lion's den. He cut through the crowd, ignoring the whispers. He walked right up to the circle of elites surrounding Natalie and Harrison. "Natalie," he said, his voice loud enough to silence the immediate conversation. The group turned. The governor looked annoyed at the interruption. Harrison Thorne looked amused. Natalie turned slowly. Up close, she was even more breathtaking. The plain woman, who used to wear yoga pants and oversized sweaters, was gone. Her skin was luminous, likely the result of treatments he had never offered to pay for. But it was her eyes that stopped him. They were clear, unburdened. "Grant," she said. Her tone was polite, distant. The way one greets a waiter at a restaurant one doesn't particularly like. "I didn't think you'd make it past security. I heard there was a mix-up with the invitations." "Cut the act," Grant said, stepping into her personal space. Harrison shifted his weight, ready to intervene, but Natalie held up a hand to stop him. She didn't need protection. "It's a lovely party, isn't it?" Natalie asked. "And Chloe?" Did she enjoy the red carpet? I saw she wore the emerald silk. A brave choice. That shade is so 2018. A few people in the circle chuckled. What is this, Nat? Grant gestured to the banner above them. Heritage Weaves, platinum sponsor. You're spending the little money I gave you on a vanity project to try and embarrass me? The circle went deadly silent. Accusing a sponsor of being a vanity project in front of the press and industry titans was social suicide. Natalie smiled. It was a shark's smile. The money you gave me? She repeated softly. Grant, the sponsorship fee for tonight was $5 million. The settlement you gave me was barely enough to cover the property taxes on the mill for 6 months. Then where did the money come from? Grant demanded. Who is bankrolling you? Is it him? He jabbed a finger at Harrison. Did you sleep your way to a sponsorship? The gasps were audible. Harrison stepped forward, his face darkening, but Natalie laughed. A genuine, delighted laugh. Oh, Grant, you always did underestimate the value of things you couldn't understand. She took a step closer to him, lowering her voice so only he and the immediate circle could hear. You didn't give me money, Grant. You gave me the patent. Grant blinked. What patent? The mill makes wool blankets. The mill made wool blankets in 1990, Natalie corrected. When you bought it 10 years ago, you didn't read the acquisition filing, did you? You never read the fine print. Included in the assets was a dormant patent for a biosynthetic polymer weaving technique, a technique that required a specific type of loom that only the old mill possesses. She smoothed the liquid silver dress over her hip. This isn't silk, Grant. This is Aegis thread. It's bulletproof, fire-resistant, conductive, and lighter than cotton, and I'm the only person in the world who can manufacture it. Grant stared at the dress. He looked at the banner. And do you know who just signed a 10-year exclusive contract to use Aegis thread for their next generation of wearable tech and military contracting? Natalie asked, her eyes locking with his. She gestured to Harrison Thorne. Orion Tech, Harrison said, his voice deep and satisfied. The contract is valued at $400 million. Initial public offering is next quarter. Grant felt the room spin. $400 million. He had given it away. He had literally handed her a $500 million company because he was in a rush to get to a dinner at Le Bernardin. So, Natalie said, picking up her glass of champagne, I didn't sleep my way here, Grant. I bought the building. Now, if you'll excuse us, the governor was just asking me about the job creation initiatives in upstate. Enjoy table 47. I hear the bread rolls are fresh. She turned her back on him. The circle closed around her, completely cutting Grant out. He stood there, alone in the center of the room, as the realization of his catastrophic failure crashed down on him. Grant stumbled away from the group, his vision blurring. He needed a drink. He needed a lawyer. He needed to strangle someone. He found the bar and ordered a double scotch, ignoring the bartender's judgmental look. He downed it in one gulp. His mind was racing. $400 million. He had to get it back. There had to be a way. He was Grant Miller. He negotiated hostile takeovers for breakfast. She was Natalie. She was the woman who cried during Kodak commercials. She couldn't possibly manage a company of that size. She was a figurehead. Harrison Thorne was likely manipulating her. Grant! Chloe appeared at his side, looking frantic. Her mascara was slightly smudged. I can't sit there. It's right next to the kitchen. The waiters keep bumping my chair, and the lighting is terrible for selfies. Shut up, Chloe, Grant snapped. Chloe recoiled, shocked. Excuse me? I said shut up. I'm thinking. Grant looked across the room. Natalie and Harrison were moving toward the private VIP balcony overlooking Central Park. That was where the real deals happened. That was where the heavy hitters went to smoke cigars and carve up the world. Come with me, Grant said, grabbing Chloe's hand again. Where? Back to the table? No, we're crashing the VIP party. But the security, I know the security guard, Jerry. I tipped him $1,000 last Christmas. Grant dragged Chloe through the crowd. maneuvering toward the velvet-roped staircase leading to the balcony. As he predicted, Jerry was at the door. Grant slipped a $100 bill into Jerry's palm, all the cash he had on him, and winked. Jerry hesitated, then stepped aside. Grant burst onto the balcony. The cool night air of New York hit him. The balcony was sparsely populated, a few billionaires, a famous director, and in the corner, leaning against the stone railing, were Natalie and Harrison. They weren't kissing. They weren't flirting. They were looking at a tablet. "The Asian market is key," Natalie was saying, her voice sharp and professional. "If we launch the athletic line before the military contract goes public, we capture the consumer sector first." "Agreed," Harrison replied. "I'll have my team in Tokyo prep the launch." "Grant, don't," Chloe whispered, sensing the danger. Grant ignored her. He strode across the balcony. "It's fraud," Grant announced. Natalie and Harrison looked up. Natalie didn't look surprised. She looked bored. "Hello again, Grant. Stalking is a bad look for you?" "It's fraud," Grant repeated, pointing a finger at her. "You misled me during the divorce settlement. You knew the value of the mill and you concealed it. That's material non-disclosure. I can have the settlement overturned. I can take half of Heritage Weaves. Hell, I can take it all." Natalie handed the tablet to Harrison and folded her arms. The wind whipped the silver dress around her legs, making her look like a statue of justice. "I concealed nothing," Natalie said calmly. "The patent was listed in the assets register of the old mill, which was provided to your legal team 3 times. The patent number was US 88,420B. It was right there, on page 402 of the disclosure packet." She took a step closer. "You didn't read it. Arthur didn't read it. You were too busy hiding your assets in the Cayman Islands to bother looking at what you were giving away." Grant froze. "I don't have assets in the Caymans." "Oh, Grant, please." Natalie sighed. "During the divorce, I hired a forensic accountant. We found the shell companies, Blue Horizon Holdings, Vertex LLC. We found the $3 million you siphoned off Apex accounts to buy this one a condo in Miami." She nodded toward Chloe. Chloe gasped. "You told me you bought that condo with your bonus." "He stole it from his investors," Natalie said casually. "I have the bank transfers, Grant. I have the IP logs. I didn't use them during the divorce because I just wanted out. I wanted the mill, and I wanted peace. But if you try to sue me for Heritage Weaves, if you try to claim one thread of this company—" She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper that was colder than the wind off the Hudson River. "I will send that file to the SEC. I will send it to the FBI. And I will send it to every single one of your investors. You won't just lose your company, Grant. You will go to federal prison." Grant opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was checkmated. Totally and completely. But I made you," he stammered, grasping for any shred of superiority. "I gave you the life you had. You were nothing before me." Natalie laughed again, but this time it was sad. "Grant, I was the one who told you to buy into Tesla in 2012. I was the one who edited your speeches so you didn't sound like a robot. I was the one who remembered your partner's wives' birthdays. I wasn't nothing. I was the fuel. You just treated me like the exhaust." She turned to Harrison. "I'm bored, and I have a board meeting at 8 a.m. Shall we go?" "We shall," Harrison said, offering his arm. As they walked past, Chloe, who had been silent, suddenly lunged forward. She couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand being the loser. "It's just a dress." "Oh!" Chloe shrieked, grabbing a glass of red wine from a passing waiter's tray. "Let's see how special it is." She threw the wine. It happened in slow motion. The dark red liquid arced through the air, aimed perfectly at Natalie's silver chest. Grant closed his eyes. This was it. A catfight. A scandal. At least Natalie would be humiliated. But the splash never happened. The wine hit the dress. But instead of soaking in, the liquid beaded up instantly, like mercury on glass. It rolled off the fabric in perfect spheres, cascading down to the floor without leaving a single stain. The dress remained pristine, shimmering and dry. Natalie stopped. She looked down at the puddle of wine on the stone floors, then up at Chloe, who was holding the empty glass, shaking with rage. "Hydrophobic nano-weave," Natalie said, her voice echoing on the silent balcony. "Stain-proof, liquid-proof, life-proof." She brushed a non-existent speck of dust from her shoulder. "You can't stain me, Chloe. Neither of you can." Natalie turned and walked away, the silver train gliding over the puddle of wine, untouched. Harrison paused for a moment. He looked at Grant, who was pale and sweating. He looked at Chloe, who was hyperventilating. "Gentlemen," Harrison said to Grant, though there was only one man standing there. "Apex Capital's stock is down 4% in after-hours trading. Word travels fast. I'd suggest you check your email." Harrison followed Natalie, leaving Grant and Chloe alone on the balcony. Grant pulled out his phone with trembling hands. Subject, urgent. Board meeting, from Apex Board of Directors. "Grant, in light of recent rumors regarding financial impropriety and the mishandling of marital assets affecting firm liquidity, the board is convening an emergency vote of no confidence tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Your presence is required." Grant dropped the phone. It cracked against the stone floor, landing right in the puddle of spilled wine. The morning sun hitting the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Hudson Yards penthouse didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like an interrogation lamp. Grant hadn't slept. He sat at the edge of the bed, still wearing his tuxedo trousers and dress shirt from the night before, though the bow tie was long gone and the top 3 buttons were undone. His head throbbed with the dull, rhythmic ache of a Scotch hangover, but the pain in his chest was sharper. It was panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. "Where is my Toomey suitcase?" Chloe's voice cut through the silence like a serrated knife. She was storming around the bedroom, throwing silk scarves and designer bikinis into a pile. Grant looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "What are you doing, Chloe?" "I'm leaving, Grant. Obviously." She didn't look at him. She was focused on fitting her collection of La Mer creams into a vanity case. "Leaving? Because of one bad night? Because of a rumor?" Grant stood up, swaying slightly. "I'm Grant Miller. I fix things. I'll go into that board meeting. I'll charm the directors, and by noon, this will all be a funny story we tell in the Hamptons." Chloe stopped packing. She turned to him, and for the first time Grant saw her clearly. Without the filters, without the gala lighting, she looked hard. "Mercenary. It's not a rumor, Grant," she said, pulling out her phone. "It's on Bloomberg. It's on the Wall Street Journal. Apex Capital CEO investigated for embezzlement. Your accounts are frozen. I tried to use the black card to book a flight to Cabo this morning. Declined." She snapped the suitcase shut. "I signed up for the power couple lifestyle, Grant. I signed up for the yacht weeks and the front row seats. I didn't sign up for visiting hours at a federal penitentiary." "I left my wife for you," Grant whispered, the words tasting like ash. "I gave you everything." "You gave me what was convenient for you," Chloe corrected, slinging her purse over her shoulder. "Or you wanted a trophy. Well, trophies don't stay on the shelf when the house is being foreclosed. Goodbye, Grant." She walked out. The slam of the front door echoed through the cavernous, empty apartment. Grant stood there for a full minute, listening to the silence. Then his survival instinct kicked in. He wasn't dead yet. He grabbed a fresh suit, navy blue, power tie, shaved with trembling hands, and chugged 3 espressos. He marched into the Apex Capital headquarters at 8:45 a.m. Usually the lobby was a place of deference. Junior analysts would nod respectfully. Receptionists would rush to press the elevator button. Today they stared. They whispered behind their hands. The security guard, a man Grant had walked past for 5 years without learning his name, asked for his ID badge. "I'm the CEO," Grant snapped. "Board orders, sir. All badges must be scanned." Grant swiped his badge. It flashed red. Access denied. The guard looked uncomfortable. "I have to escort you to the conference room, sir." The walk of shame to the boardroom was the longest walk of Grant's life. When the mahogany doors opened, the air in the room was so cold it could have preserved a mammoth. 12 men and women sat around the oval table. These were people Grant had made rich, people he had golfed with, dined with, vacationed with. Now they looked at him like he was a contagion. "Sit down, Grant," said Eldon Hayes, the chairman of the board. Eldon was 80 years old, a man who had survived the dot-com bubble and the 2008 crash. He had eyes like flint. "Eldon," Grant started, putting on his best confident smile, "I know the headlines look bad, but it's a misunderstanding. A vindictive ex-wife trying to—" "We have the files, Grant," Eldon interrupted, sliding a thick black binder across the table. Grant looked down. The label read, "Project Blue Horizon, Forensic Audit." "Natalie sent us everything at 6 a.m., Eldon said. "The shell companies in the Caymans, the unauthorized transfers from the pension fund to cover your personal real estate purchases, the falsified quarterly reports to boost stock value before your divorce settlement. It's creative accounting," Grant stammered. "Everyone does it." "Not with client money," Eldon roared, slamming his hand on the table. "You exposed this firm to SEC liability. The stock has dropped 18% since the market opened. We are bleeding out, Grant." "I can fix it," Grant pleaded. "I can settle with her. I can—" "You're fired," Eldon said. "Effective immediately. We've already drafted the press release. You are stepping down for personal health reasons. If you fight us, we hand this binder to the district attorney. If you go quietly, we might be able to keep you out of jail, provided you pay back the $3 million you stole." "I don't have $3 million liquid," Grant cried. "My assets are tied up in the divorce. I gave her the cash." "Then you better find it," Eldon said, standing up. "Security will escort you out. You have 10 minutes to clear your desk." 10 minutes later, Grant Miller, the bachelor billionaire, was standing on the sidewalk of Wall Street with a cardboard box containing a stapler, a photo of himself with Warren Buffett, and a potted succulent. It started to rain. He had no job, no girlfriend, no access to his company accounts, and a $3 million debt hanging over his head like a guillotine. He hailed a taxi, his pride too shattered to call a town car. He gave the driver the only address he had left, the only place he officially owned, since the penthouse was leased by the company. He was going to the one place he had sworn never to visit. The drive upstate took 3 hours. The rain turned from a city drizzle into a torrential downpour as the taxi wound its way through the Catskill Mountains. Grant stared out the window, watching the landscape change from grey concrete to lush, imposing green. He remembered buying the old mill property 10 years ago. He had driven up here with Natalie in a rented sedan. She had been so excited. She saw potential in the crumbling brick walls and the rushing river. He had only seen a tax write-off. "It has good bones, Grant," she had said, touching the rusted gate. "It just needs someone to believe in it." He hadn't believed in it. He hadn't believed in her. "This is it, pal," the taxi driver said, pulling over onto the muddy shoulder. "Meter says $400. Grant paid with a credit card that he prayed hadn't been cancelled yet. It went through. He grabbed his cardboard box, he had nowhere else to put it, and stepped out into the rain. He looked up. The old mill wasn't a ruin anymore. The rusted chain-link fence was gone, replaced by a 12-foot-high perimeter wall made of polished slate and steel. Security cameras with red, blinking eyes were mounted every 50 feet. The main gate was a massive structure of black iron, stylized to look like weaving threads. A guard booth stood at the entrance, manned by 2 men in tactical gear. This wasn't a textile factory. It looked like a data center for the CIA. Grant walked up to the booth, soaked to the bone, holding his box. "I'm here to see Natalie Miller," Grant shouted over the rain. The guard slid open the glass window. He didn't look impressed. "Name?" "Grant Miller. I'm her ex-husband." The guard looked at a tablet. "Not on the list." "Call her," Grant demanded, summoning the last dregs of his CEO voice. "Tell her I know about the Caymans. Tell her I'm here to negotiate a truce." The guard hesitated, then pressed a button on his earpiece. He murmured something low. A pause. Then he looked back at Grant. "Miss V is in a meeting, but the Director of Operations will see you. Step through the scanner." "Nice." The gate buzzed and unlocked. Grant walked through, the heavy iron clanging shut behind him. The grounds were immaculate. The old brick factory buildings had been restored, their large industrial windows glowing with warm amber light. But between the old buildings were new, sleek glass structures, humming with the sound of servers and machinery. Drones zipped overhead, carrying spools of shimmering silver thread between buildings. It was a hive of industry, a fortress of innovation. A golf cart pulled up, driven by another silent security guard. "Get in." They drove to the main building, the original mill. Grant was led through heavy oak doors into a lobby that smelled of cedar and expensive coffee. The walls were lined with framed patents and awards. Innovator of the Year, Department of Defense Excellence Award. Grant felt smaller with every step. "Mr. Wilder is waiting for you in the weaving floor," the receptionist said. "Wilder?" Grant asked. "Who is Wilder?" "Director of Operations." Grant was led down a long corridor. The sound of machinery grew louder, a rhythmic, hypnotic thrumming. Thump hiss, thump hiss. It sounded like a heartbeat. The doors at the end of the hall opened, and Grant stepped onto a catwalk overlooking the factory floor. His breath caught in his throat. Below him were hundreds of looms, but not the wooden ones of the past. These were chrome and glass beasts, moving with terrifying speed. Lasers danced over the fabric they were weaving, the Aegis thread. It shimmered like a river of diamonds flowing through the machines. Standing at the end of the catwalk, leaning against a railing and looking down at the production line, was a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a fitted flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms thick with muscle. He wore dark jeans and work boots that looked like they had seen actual mud. He wore a cowboy hat, not as a costume, but as a piece of him. He turned as Grant approached. He had a square jaw covered in a few days of scruff and eyes the color of cold steel. He looked like the kind of man who built houses with his bare hands and broke horses for fun. "You've got some nerve showing up here, Miller," the man said. His voice was a deep, gravelly drawl. Western, unrefined, yet commanding. "I'm here to see Natalie," Grant said, clutching his wet cardboard box. "Who are you? Her bodyguard?" The man chuckled. He pushed his hat back slightly. "I'm Wilder," he said. "Boone Wilder. I run this place. Natalie dreams it up. I make sure it gets built." "Boone Wilder," Grant repeated. The name sounded familiar. "Wait, Wilder, you're the rancher? The one who developed the biopolymer feed for the sheep?" "That's right," Wilder said. "Natalie found me in Montana 3 years ago. I was about to lose my family ranch. She saw that my wool had a unique protein structure because of the feed I invented. She didn't try to buy me out. She didn't try to steal it. She offered me a partnership." Wilder took a step closer, towering over Grant. "She invested in me when I was nothing. Just like she invested in you." Grant flinched. "I need to talk to her," Grant said, his voice shaking. I'm in trouble, Wilder. The board fired me. They want $3 million, or they send me to jail. I need her to retract the file. I need a loan. Anything." Wilder looked at him with disgust. "You come into her house after parading your mistress around the Met Gala, after treating Natalie like furniture for a decade, and you ask for money. I built this," Grant shouted, gesturing vaguely at the building. "I bought this property. Without me, none of this exists." "You bought a carcass," Wilder spat. "Natalie breathed life into it. You know what she did while you were out having business dinners with Chloe? She was up here, sleeping on a cot in the office, fixing pipes, learning chemistry. She worked 18-hour days to make Heritage Weaves real. She did it to prove to herself that she wasn't the useless housewife you made her feel like." Wilder turned back to the railing, looking down at the gleaming machines. We'd just secured the Orion contract. We're about to change the world, and you're standing here with a box of office supplies, soaking wet, begging for scraps. I'll sue, Grant threatened, though it sounded hollow. I still have rights to the marital assets. No, you don't, a voice came from behind them. Grant spun around. Natalie stood in the doorway of the catwalk. She wasn't wearing the silver gown anymore. She was wearing a white lab coat over a simple black turtleneck and jeans. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She held a clipboard. She looked more beautiful than she had at the gala. She looked powerful. Grant, she said coolly. Wilder, is he bothering the production schedule? Just a minor pest control issue, boss, Wilder said, a warmth entering his voice that Grant had never heard directed at himself. Natalie, Grant pleaded, dropping the box. It hit the metal grating with a thud. Please, they're going to arrest me. You can't let that happen. We were married for 10 years. Natalie walked over to him. She stopped 3 feet away, maintaining a sanitary distance. 10 years, she repeated. I remember asking you to look at my business plan for the mill 3 years ago. Do you remember what you said? Grant swallowed hard. He remembered. He had been watching a football game. He hadn't even looked at the paper. Don't bother your pretty little head with business, Nat. Stick to the charity auctions. He couldn't say it. You told me I wasn't cut out for the big leagues, Natalie said. You told me I lacked the killer instinct. She reached into the pocket of her lab coat and pulled out a checkbook. Grant's heart leapt. She was going to help him. She still cared. Natalie uncapped a pen. She wrote quickly, tore the check out, and held it up. Here, she said. Grant reached for it, his hands trembling with relief. Thank you, Nat. I knew you. He looked at the check. It was made out to Grant Miller. The amount was $10. What is this? Grant asked, staring at the paper. It's cab fare to the bus station, Natalie said, and it's a refund for the advice you gave me. She turned to Wilder. Show him out, Boone. We have a shipment to certify. No, Grant lunged forward. You can't do this. I am Grant Miller. Wilder stepped in, blocking Grant's path with a chest like a brick wall. He didn't hit Grant. He didn't have to. He just looked at him. You were Grant Miller, Wilder said softly. Now, you're just a trespasser. Wilder grabbed Grant's arm, a grip like iron, and marched him back down the catwalk, away from the warmth, away from the light, back toward the rain-soaked world he had created for himself. As Grant was dragged away, he looked back one last time. Natalie hadn't watched him leave. She was already leaning over the railing next to Wilder's empty spot, examining the thread, her mind already on the future, a future that didn't include him. 6 months later, the view from the Otisville Federal Correctional Facility was nothing like the view from Hudson Yards. Instead of the skyline, Grant stared at a chain-link fence, one that wasn't made of high-tech Aegis thread, but simple, rusting steel. Grant sat in the common room, clutching a plastic cup of lukewarm coffee. It was his turn to mop the floors, a task he performed with the same meticulous, brooding intensity he once applied to board meetings. The television in the corner was tuned to CNBC, the volume turned low. Suddenly the breaking news banner flashed red. Heritage Weave's IPO shatters records. Grant stopped mopping. He walked towards the screen, mesmerized. There she was. Natalie stood on the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange, the heavy wooden gavel in her hand. She looked radiant, not in a gown this time, but in a sharp white power suit that made her look like the CEO she was always meant to be. Beside her, looking surprisingly comfortable in a charcoal suit but still holding his cowboy hat, was Boone Wilder. He wasn't standing in front of her, blocking her light, nor behind her in the shadows. He stood right beside her, his hand resting gently, protectively, on the small of her back. The look they shared before she rang the bell wasn't about business. It was pure, unadulterated partnership. The reporter's voice cut through the static of the prison rec room. Natalie Miller, dubbed the Steel Weaver, has officially become the wealthiest self-made woman in the tri-state area. When asked about her meteoric rise, she had this to say. The camera zoomed in on Natalie. She smiled, looking directly into the lens. To Grant, it felt like she was looking right through the bars. I spent a long time trying to fit into a mold that was too small for me, Natalie said, her voice steady. I realized that you can't build a skyscraper on a cracked foundation. Sometimes you have to tear it all down to build something that lasts. The screen cut to a commercial, but the knife twisted deeper a moment later. A side banner appeared promoting a new tell-all book, The Billionaire's Blunder, written by Chloe. She wasn't waiting for Grant. She was selling him out for 15 minutes of fame on a morning talk show. Grant turned off the TV. The screen went black, reflecting his gaunt, tired face. He picked up his mop. He had spent 10 years believing he was the artist, and Natalie was just the canvas. He finally understood the truth. He was just the frame, and a cheap, fragile one at that. She had always been the masterpiece. And that is the story of how Grant learned the hard way that you should never mistake silence for weakness or kindness for stupidity. He threw away a diamond to pick up a piece of glass, and in the end, he was left with nothing but cuts on his hands. What did you think of Natalie's revenge? Was it too harsh, or did Grant get exactly what he deserved? I personally loved the moment with the wine on the balcony. Talk about a mic drop. If you enjoyed this story of karma, betrayal, and sweet success, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth, and subscribe so you never miss a daily dose of drama. Let me know in the comments, would you have given Grant the $10 for the bus? I'll see you in the next story.